Thank you for downloading this Real Agriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And a big shout out as well to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Whoever you're consuming the show, it is great to have you. We greatly appreciate it. Hey, last night, fantastic time at the CAMA Awards. This is the get-together of all of the best in Canadian agri-marketing. It was in Calgary. It was a fantastic event. Saw lots of friends, listeners, audience members, as well as clients. It was a great evening. We had a portion of the RealAg team in attendance, and it was just a lot of fun. Big shout out to Laura-Lee Orr, who is the commercial lead for Canada for Corteva. We've done a lot of work with Laura-Lee over the history of real agriculture, actually going back for many of you. You'll remember our Tech Tour series, Tech Tour Live. Yes, that was a lot of fun. We get on a big bus for, do 4 cities in 4 days across Western Canada, living like rock stars. Well, not quite, but at least we're on a bus. We had so much fun. We were stressed out, short on sleep, and had a great time and great memories. Obviously, right now, Optimum Gly was a sponsor of our Agritechnica coverage in last year, as well as the Farmer Rapid Fire is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. So we do a lot of great work in collaboration with Laura-Lee and the Corteva team. And I just want to congratulate her because she was this year's recipient of the Canadian Agri-Marketer of the Year. So well deserving. There was a great video tribute by her team members from across Canada. And we want to wish Laura-Lee, on behalf of myself and the entire team at Real Agriculture, all the best to her. And I couldn't think of a more deserving person, to be honest. So big shout out to Laura-Lee Orr for being this year's Canadian Agri-Marketer of the Year. Today on the show, we are going to dive into the beef markets with Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. We've also got a great Real Ag Issues panel. Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture will be here. We got Evan Shout. He's with Farmer Coach and also host of the Truth About Ag podcast. And we'll also be joined by Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI. A lot of stuff to talk about. U.S. election. How does Canada respond? What's the best Canadian strategy? We've also got some Canadian parliamentary issues happening. We've got some private members' bills that are now maybe reaching that time period of being completely stalled out based on some of the procedures. We'll get into that, including Bill C-282. And we'll also talk today about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index and how are farmers looking at 2025. I know Evan's got some big-time insights on that. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange, right after this.
Farmers feed the world with an ever-growing population and less acreage to do it. Since 1946, Nature's Alpine Solutions has been providing sustainable fertility solutions for all crops. We don't just sell fertilizer, we live and work in agriculture every single day. We're the pioneers of liquid fertility, selling the Nature's brand in the U.S. and the Alpine brand in Canada. To learn more, call us at 877-265-BIO-K today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers. Are you looking for a profitable addition to your farm that can deliver value beyond yield? The new Seed Omega-3 Canola Production System can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities and an active God clause. Contracts include first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Contracts are available now. Commit early to maximize your opportunity. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, RealAg listeners, Canterra Seeds has 8 bags of their new CS 4100 Liberty Link canola hybrid available to be won. That's right. You get 8 bags for free. All you got to do to be the lucky winner is visit Canterra.com/RealAg to find out more. And to, like I said, to get into that contest. That is Canterra's brand new CS 4100 LL Liberty Link canola hybrid. Okay, let's talk about the beef markets. Joining us right now for the beef market update, as she always does, it is Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Anne, how are we doing?
Good day, Shaun. I'm good.
Well, can you believe we're already into November?
I can't.
Nuts.
Yesterday, we processed bred heifers in shirts, no jackets.
Yeah, you're just in T-shirts.
Yes, great.
In early November in southwestern Saskatchewan.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
Wow, that is crazy. Okay, prices. What's going on south of the border and then to Canada?
Well, U.S. really, we haven't seen much in terms of trade. Really nothing substantial to report yet. And I think it goes back, Shaun, the last couple of weeks, packers in the U.S. bought quite a few cattle, so they didn't come into this week really needing a bunch. Early bids from the packer are off about $1, $1 to $2 lower. So we'll see what today brings. I think we'll see trade by the end of today, but as we speak, we're not there. If it were $1 lower, the south would be $1.89, just so listeners have an idea what we're talking about, but nothing yet. I think one of the reasons that packers are maybe dragging their feet a wee bit this week is that choice cutout, which has gotten super strong over the last month, but it's lost $8 this week. And
okay.
So we've got it closing the choice at 309.5. That select spread is 30 back, so we're still got strong demand on those choice and prime middles. So the middle meats have been holding their own in terms of that cutout, but I think what we're seeing is the end meats and that 90s, that trim, have really backed off from those. And so when you even the middles carry a lot, but they can't carry it all. So we've got this weakness happening, and so we're off pretty good, especially compared to a couple of weeks ago on the ends and the 90s.
But demand has. Still, we are feeling very good about where demand has been, given where these prices have been in.
2024, and we've talked about it a few times, and here we're into the 11th month of the year, has been substantially better from a beef demand perspective than I think any one of us would have predicted as we came into the year with these higher retail prices. But again, as supplies start to come off, and I'm talking about from a big perspective, North America wide, and of course the cow market, cow kill way off, and so we had this big strength on the trims and the chuck to support that 90s trim. So there was lots of reasons for what was going on, but it has, in no question, has been an amazing demand year that has been stronger than any of us thought.
But we have September retail beef prices, and what are they?
we now from a Canadian perspective, we just got from StatsCan September retail beef and pork and chicken, $24.88 a kg for beef. What is that? That's 7% higher than August, the previous month.
Wow.
It's 6% higher than year to date. So that's one thing. Pork is up 4% year to date. Chicken's down 6%. So let's go back. And so this is an all-time high. This September price for beef is an all-time high at the counter. Pork, all-time highs at retail, still go back to that ASF years of 2014, 15, 16. So pork hasn't hit those highs yet. And chicken last August was in Canada was still our record chicken prices. So beef's a little bit out there on its own little limb right now, if you will. And could be, we talk about stretching the band, could be stretching that band as we speak.
But the great news, but holding, like, right. That's the part that it's been sustained demand.
Yes.
It isn't like, there's some sort of shock and people are just trying to fill their freezers and we sort of have this, fake lead up. This is like sustained, strong demand, people seeing not only the health benefits of beef, but the taste, obviously, and even with some of the prices. That is amazing to me. And I think most people, we go back 1 year, 2 years, they're taking the under if they were betting on demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this has been, now we'll talk more about 2025 as we get closer to the end of the year, as we usually do on this show. But that'll be the next challenge, because in order to support higher cattle prices again in 25, so we know supplies are going to come down a bit. We're going to have to keep inching these prices at retail higher again. So, yeah. But we'll be watching the economy in terms of how do the American Canadian consumers feel. Interest rates are starting to come down a bit. So then that whole economic picture should be supportive. It would be the guess today. So,
well, one of the things that I have said is I've seen mainstream consumer commentary in some of the main pubs talk about geez, we need more supply because these prices are so high. Well, we have to have these prices to encourage more supply. We also need Mother Nature to cooperate on a consistent basis, but that's the financial reality and how the market works. And the cycle for cattle is, it's extended. It's much longer than, say, poultry from a ramp up or ramp down sort of perspective. Now, auction marts, we're fall run, price there, ranch. Yeah. Yes. Love it.
Love it. And so here we are in November. This calf and feeder market's just holding super strong. And actually, after both those classes kind of made a bit of a September low, kind of got a little dreary in there, we've actually moved both of those markets higher. Extremely not seasonal or normal for calf prices to move higher into October, November, but they have. And so just looking at a 5.5 weight, this is be an Alberta steer price, we're about $30 100 higher than what they were back in September. I think we're going to see the Canfax average probably come off near $4.30 100 for that 5.5 weight average in Alberta. 850s are about $10 higher than their September low. So these are good moves. Just not typical. So on average, if you compare where a calf price is today to where it was this same week last year, we're about $45 100 higher. So that's $250 a head. So wow. It's been an amazing run. Now here, this will be supportive to it as well. Our auction market volume last week was above the 5-year average, but otherwise since August 1, we're down 28% in auction volume. So the numbers are showing there's smaller numbers coming to town, and that's certainly supporting this market.
Now, does that auction mart flow, is that just physical auctions or is that also electronic auctions as well?
This number is just the physical cattle that are coming through. So yeah. So if we're not counting the cows that traded back in this, on the videos and stuff earlier on. So this is just talking about what's coming through the market today.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely something to follow. Yeah. And I think on the minds right now, a lot of producers, well, probably quite frankly on both sides of the board because of what we call the integrated supply chain, we got some trade talk to discuss here over the future number of months here. And I have heard from a number of Canadian cattle producers, as have you, some uncertainty, and that could have an impact on the cattle market as well.
Well, yeah, anytime we have a change of administration, this is what we go through. And so certainly lots of things have been said in the campaign in terms of what the plans will be. So we'll have to see where those come. And I know our association leaders and our feds and our provinces will be getting their ducks in a row, and we need to, because there will be a change. There's, as we've seen this administration before, we'll see it again, but probably with different, a little bit maybe different focus than what we would have seen in 2016. So yeah, certainly lots of things to watch. I think you and I talked about this before we got on the call, but not complacency, right? I think we need to be proactive on this at all levels.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about putting the numbers together. I've given this example lots. You think about some of the U.S. The U.S. packing plants and how they rely or they really have interests, and those plants are justified based on live cattle coming out of Canada to those plants, and that those are American jobs. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this, as there's a lot of flow back and forth, not only of live animals but also finished product in a box.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
Hey, Anne, have yourself a great weekend. All the best to you, and enjoy this great November weather we're having.
I will. Same to you, Shaun. Thank you.
Great stuff. Okay, coming up next, we got the Real Ag Issues panel. We got Evan Shout of Farmer Coach. We got Tyler McCann of CAPI and Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture. We're going to break down the U.S. election, what happened in Canada this week as well, and a whole lot more. You're listening to Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We're going to talk to Jack Legg, SGS's business development manager.
Yes, so at our facility, we're predominantly testing for nutrients. So soil testing for fertility to manage crop production. But SGS also has many different labs in the network, so we can help out from an environmental standpoint. Maybe it's heavy metals testing or contaminants. We've got seed testing capabilities.
You can find out more about SGS to help you elevate your business by calling 1-800-952-5407.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Friday. Oh, I'm looking forward to this issues panel. There's no shortage of stuff that happened this week, and sometimes you kind of say that. This is one of those weeks where I think we can all agree there is lots to break down. Hey, I want to mention Brandt Agricultural Products. The Brandt high-speed disc is made to manage residue, condition seed beds, level ruts, and reclaim wetlands in the most challenging of conditions. Lead the field with a lineup of versatile high-speed discs from Brandt and achieve better results with every pass, and receive up to a $12,000 rebate. All you got to do for this limited time offer, you just got to go to brandt.ca to learn more. Joining us this week, Kelvin Heppner out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, are you enjoying this beautiful November weather?
We've had an amazing fall here in southern Manitoba. It's been warm. I know, the grass is still actually partly green. We've had above freezing temperatures, and yeah, it's been perfect for getting field work done. We started our 2025 broiler breeder hatching egg flock this week. We placed 12,000 day-old chicks. They came up from the U.S., and we placed them yesterday. And normally the day that we place that flock, it's always here in early November, and normally we have our first snowstorm. That truck has to make its way. We've got these drivers coming up from the southern U.S. with chicks, and they usually get stuck in a snowstorm somewhere in North Dakota. And we were fortunate that didn't happen this week. So we'll take this weather as long as it lasts.
So I think you told me those chicks came from Oklahoma. Like, is they're rolling in and you're unloading it? Or are you playing like Luke Combs, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma? And I could just see this whole video.
It's actually always very surreal as the drivers get out of the truck and hop out, and it's a blizzard, often a blizzard at the front door of our barn. And these two super friendly guys with southern U.S. accents. Good morning in the snowstorm. It's always surreal. And then they're gone back into the night and on to the next farm, often headed to Saskatchewan or Alberta with chicks for farms there too.
And then as quickly as they can, a left turn back to Oklahoma, where maybe it's a little bit warmer. For sure. Also joining us here today is Evan Shout. He is with Farmer Coach and also the host of the Truth About Ag podcast that you can hear here on RealAgriculture.com. Hey, Evan, how are we doing?
Oh, I can't complain. Obviously, I like the weather, much like Kelvin said, but once farmers get out of the field, I don't really get out of the office very much. So I'd like to say I'm enjoying it, but I'm enjoying it from my windows.
Yeah, and as you talk to some of the clients there with Farmer Coach Evan, there really is no excuse not to have all your fall work completed this year, because boy, Mother Nature has cooperated this fall.
Yeah, I mean, obviously during harvest, it probably withdrew harvest a little longer than most guys wanted, a few down showers, but yeah, it doesn't sound like guys are short on work. And I mean, one thing we know about farmers is they're really good at finding jobs. So.
Yeah, we've been hearing that on the Farmer Rapid Fire over the last couple of weeks, too. Also joining us, a very wily veteran of the program. It is Tyler McCann. He is Managing Director at CAPI. Tyler, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Shaun. Thanks for having me back again. Lots to talk about today.
There is. I want to start with Canada before. The trap here is to just dive into the U.S. election, but I think we need to sort of set the stage a little bit on what's been happening in Canada this week before we react to the U.S. side of the equation. So, Kelvin, let's start with, we're going to get to 282, but there was also some other private members bills that got some activity in Ottawa this week. Let's talk about those before we get to 282. John Barlow's trespassing bill. What happened there?
Yeah, this is the bill that aims at preventing activists from entering farms, and it's about preventing trespassing and biosecurity breaches. And so there was an amendment to this bill at the Senate committee. We're seeing this tactic being deployed by the Senate increasingly here over the last year. It started with Bill C-234, the bill to remove the carbon tax off of propane and natural gas used on farms. And now we've seen at least 4 agriculture-related private members bills, 3 of them here in the last couple of weeks, derailed by amendments at the committee stage. So this trespassing bill, as well as a bill for bankruptcy protection for fruit and vegetable producers, that bill has also been derailed at the Senate stage, at Senate committee. And then, and you mentioned 282. This is the bill that would have prohibited any concessions on supply management in future trade talks. It also received an amendment sending it into likely into the ether, where if it has to go back to the House of Commons, it's likely not headed toward becoming law before it dies with the next federal election.
Tyler, is anything going to happen in the House of Commons, like in the near term?
No. So the Conservatives are still playing out the game around a privilege motion that's really kind of ground that up to halt. The other thing is we keep hearing stories, lots of talk that Parliament will be prorogued and that will grind all of this to a complete stop. The bills, private members' bills that we're talking about, go back to where they were before in the House, but they restart the clock in the Senate. So it will depend on where things are, how things play out. But it's really hard to see how the odds of success for any of these PMBs at this point in time.
Evan, I think this is one of the things that people get frustrated with. We send people to Ottawa, and when there's times where things aren't getting done, or it just appears there's stalling and gamesmanship, I think it's kind of frustrating for a lot of Canadians. And I think Canadians are sort of saying right now, can we just have this election and get to the next step, because this just feels like it's dragging out.
Well, and I think we've been in that waiting period for a long time now. I mean, we watch what happens, and every time they try to ram something through, it either gets stopped or, we're back and forth. And whether it's with grower groups, with, the amount of social media, press, and everything else that these bills kind of bring into the industry, it just frustrates people. And like I said, we've just been in a waiting pattern, and we're just waiting for this election to happen. I mean, especially, as you said, we're going to talk about it, but this week especially, I think, has people excited of what's coming, and I think it's just prolonging.
Right. So I wrote an opinion column about 282, how I think, it's really wedging relationships in the ag community, especially people that are interacting in Ottawa. And I'm not speculating on that. We're hearing that from groups. So Tyler, on 282, what do you think happens now? Do you think that I may get my wish and this just sort of fades away, or is this something the Bloc continues to hammer down on, regardless of some of the parliamentary stall stuff that's happening?
Yeah, I think for better or for worse, the Bloc is not going to give up on this. They are talking about it again this week, about pressuring the government, demanding that the government do something about it, to use whatever influence it has in the Senate to keep moving this forward. They kind of played chicken around their support for the government, and their original deadline passed, but they've gone back to it and said, no, we might still support the government if they support the OAS change, the old age supplement change, and the 282 legislation that they were looking for. But I do think it's important to kind of separate the Senate when it's doing good work, making good changes that should have probably been done in the House, like they did in 282. We can kind of talk about the merits of the bill writ large, but what the Senate did was make it a better bill at the end of the day. And I think that's very different than what they did with the Trespassing Act, where I think that they made amendments just to kind of screw the bill up and try and get it to pass at the end of the day. And I think that those are two really different dynamics at play, but I don't think 282 is going away anytime soon.
Okay.
In both cases, though, it's the unelected Senate interfering with the will of the elected chamber, and that's something
this is why we should have an elected Senate. My Alberta position, we should have an elected Senate then.
But we should understand though, like 282 is such a good example of something that's really good for politics and really shitty or really bad policy. Maybe you've got to watch my language on that, Shaun. But it's not good for the country, and it is good that the Senate was actually able to do some in-depth study and actually look at it and say, what do we need to do to make this bill better? That is the reason why they're there. I think that they earned their paycheck on 282.
And Evan, I think we have heard repeatedly from farmers on both sides of this issue. But when I hear from the farmers that are growing, canola and pulses and wheat, corn, soybeans, the proteins like pork and beef, the exportable commodities, they are very concerned about the repercussions of 282 on their ability to export product. That is top of mind for those people.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's a political ploy right now, but the after effects on all the other industries and all the other parts of agriculture, we know what those are. I mean, harder deals to get through, harder exports, less ability for us to get our products to market. I mean, there's a million ways it hurts every other organization, and I think the government knows that, and it's being used as a way to wedge probably one of the strongest industries in Canada, because we're too busy fighting against each other and putting that divide in the middle than we are actually trying to push good bills through and good policy. So I think it's doing what they want it to do, to tell you the truth, which is just making us a lot less powerful industry than we really are.
Yeah, I wonder, Tyler, if the time that supporters of 282 have spent on the farm group side, if that time would have been better spent not doing 282, which is going to be really a flimsy piece of legislation at the end of the day anyway, spent more just working on lobbying and providing their position that why we need to not provide any more market access instead of doing it through the legislative process.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, most groups behind closed doors would say they're not happy with how 282's gone. Again, the Bloc really pushed it. They put extra kind of fuel on the fire when they made a big piece of it. And I'm not sure anybody's happy with how it's ended up, Shaun. But I think that there is an important difference. We talk about kind of how export-oriented ag reacts to this compared to supply-managed sectors. I think the big difference is a supply-managed farmer will vote for supply management. An export-oriented farmer isn't going to vote for freer trade, right? Like, it's just not important enough of an issue for them, but it really does matter for dairy, poultry, egg farmers. And I think that that's just why it's different at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, very good point. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're now going to transition when we come back to what happened south of the border this week and what should Canada's response be strategically, as trade is going to be a very big focus and probably defense spending as well. You're listening to RealAg Radio, World Radio 147, Sirius XM.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more by going to excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca. Excite Bio. Okay, we got a great panel here today for the program, RealAg Radio, the Issues panel. We got Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture, Evan Shout, Farmer Coach, and the Truth About Ag podcast, as well as Tyler McCann, the Managing Director at CAPI. Okay, let's get to the U.S. election, south of the border. Okay, now, I think there was, depending on which poll you looked at, it could have gone either way. I don't think what people expected whatsoever, Kelvin, at least some people I listened to, was Trump also winning the popular vote. Pretty clear mandate this week in the U.S. election.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of this where it almost feels like deja vu with 2016, but even to a greater extent, the message is even stronger from the U.S. electorate in terms of, like you said, Trump winning the popular vote. I know there are still some votes being counted more on the western side of the country, so we don't know the final numbers yet, but the popular vote, and then of course, the White House, the Senate, and it looks like right now, and these votes are still being counted, holding the House for the trifecta as well. So certainly a decisive win, and I think largely, again, due to Trump's clear prioritization of certain messages and certain things that if you ask a voter in the U.S., what is Trump running on versus what it was Harris running on, the answers for Trump were a lot clearer than what the answers were for Harris. And so I think for a lot of voters, at least. And so, yeah, I think there's a million different opinions that have been spilled this week in terms of the why. And I'm not going to necessarily say that I have a more informed opinion than anybody else, but it's something that I think it is what it is now, and we move on. And as Canada, of course, we will be focusing on the trade side of things, like you said, defense side of things, and I think really trying to push, as Doug Ford has talked about this week, a Team North America approach, not just a Team Canada approach, a Team North America approach. Yeah,
they got their work cut out for them. Evan, you work with a lot of different farms, more on the larger scale in Western Canada, and do some great work with Maverick Ag. Talk about what's the response from farmers that you're working with? Do they see opportunity? Do they see concern? What's sort of your summation there?
Well, I think it's a bit of a split, and not a split by the farms, but a split of feelings. Because to tell you the truth, I'm smiling. I like what's happened down there, and I think it's for the economy and everything else. I think there's some really good policies that are going to go through. Now, on that same coin, a lot of our farms are a little worried about some of the wild cards. And I mean, the wild cards, we've all said them. I mean, tariffs, RFK scares me quite a bit, and what he's going to do on the health side and how that affects agriculture. I mean, there's a lot of things up in the air right now, and things he said that are scaring producers in Canada. And I think they should be, because right now I think Trump has a lot of strength, a lot of leverage, a lot of power. And the government we have in place, I don't feel, or at least I'm not as positive about the ability to push back on a lot of these things. So from my standpoint, I think most of the farms I work with are really happy he's in for some bigger strokes and some 30,000 foot picture. But from an agriculture standpoint, I think there's a lot of fear.
I to be quite honest, I kind of detect that from a lot of farm country in the U.S. too. Similar, yep. If you listen to AgriTalk on Wednesday, where Chip talks to farmers, they clearly both voted for Trump, but they were like, yeah, I don't like tariffs, and I'm concerned about this, and so I think that's a common mixed sort of response. And hey, if you were all in on a candidate, I would sort of question if you're really thinking about some of the complexities of policy. Tyler, what do you, in response to all this and tariffs and not liking integrated supply chains, and tariffs are going to start immediately, and then depending on how that trade deficit works, maybe pull those tariffs back or increase them. Mexico, for example, facing maybe potentially 100% in tariffs if they don't close off their northern border. How should farm groups in Canada be reacting to this?
I think that there's obviously a lot of concern and focus on the tariffs, right? And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how do they work better in Ottawa, but also how do they work better with their counterparts in the United States. But as Evan talked about, there's a lot more that's going to change or could change besides just the tariffs. And I think trying to figure out what does it look like if they try and put some sort of ban on seed oil that, RFK's talked about, these changes at EPA or FDA, how that plays out. I think a lot of people need to spend a lot more time thinking through those dynamics. But, for all of the talk about how this integrated market and we're, we have these great Team Canada missions, we remind everybody how much that trade matters. Vance in particular has spoken out against the downsides of that integrated market. They have already gone out and pushed back against that claim. And so I think for a lot of farm groups, the best thing that they can do is actually go to Ottawa and say things like, we need to spend more money on defense, right? It's going to be, how do we think outside of agriculture to much better position the government? And that's not going to be a farm policy thing that's going to make a difference, probably. It's going to be about defense and geopolitics and these broader sets of issues that we need to fix in Ottawa to improve our relations in Washington.
Yeah, I wonder if we don't see a rephrasing of integrated supply chain. I've heard, Vice President-elect Vance talk on numerous occasions in speeches and on podcasts where he talks negatively, as you said, about we want domestic supply chains, not integrated supply chains. Now, how they apply that to ag will be fascinating to watch. I know how they're applying that to John Deere with a plant in Mexico. So just think about if John Deere was the beef industry, and they apply that same sort of Now that's John Deere's one company versus a whole bunch of voters. So you can't just make that cross comparison, Kelvin. But I wonder if we're not going to see a change in the verbiage that industry associations on both sides of the border are using.
Yeah, and I think there's also, there's potential there in terms of changing semantics. I think when Vance talks about integrated supply chains and that type of thing, he's referring to China, he's referring to Mexico, and I'd like to think that Canada has room to not be in the same category as those countries. But
how did that work out for us on products to USA labeling?
Yeah, it hasn't. It hasn't well.
And again, I think that
there's now on the feedstocks for biofuels in the U.S. That policy and what that do for canola crush. That's where I think we need to play up that Team North America, and in that as Team North America again, we're countering the weight of China in the world economy, not going at it on our own kind of thing. That's I think the strategic place that Canada has to go ahead.
And on biofuels, you have 45Z. Yes, Canada. We're thinking we want continental feedstocks, not domestic feedstocks. This wasn't the intent to not include, say, Canadian canola in SAF processed in the U.S. But, American farmers also benefit from the Canadian clean fuel regulation. Canada is the largest purchaser of U.S. ethanol. And one of the parts that's driving that is our requirements in the CFR to reduce the carbon intensity of our fuel. So American farmers are benefiting as well from our own domestic policy. I think it's one of the things we got to remind them of. Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's. I worry, Shaun, that that idea about we need to go and remind them about the benefits of Canada to the U.S. That idea that we can change the language that we're using and we can call it something other than integrated supply chains is just like a naive approach that doesn't recognize how much things have changed in the United States and how much things are going to change in the United States. And I really think that we keep looking for the easy way out on these issues. And I don't think that there are going to be any. And I think that we need to be a lot more thoughtful, a lot more aggressive. I think that we need to find ways to be a lot more assertive that go beyond just saying, hey, we're really important. Our market matters to you. I think we saw what happened last time when the U.S. sacrificed the Chinese market for U.S. exports. All they did was subsidize U.S. farmers, right? So they may lose the Canadian market, but there will be another Trump bailout, and Congress will, authorize billions of dollars more to U.S. farmers to make up for it, and we'll be the ones left with nothing to do at the end of the day. And I think we need to really get our heads around this. Has got to go far beyond, new names or new approaches or trying to be nice. We need to be a lot more assertive. We need to be a lot more thoughtful, and we need to be a lot more ambitious.
Hey,
and I think he's coming in. I mean, he's coming in with a big stroke here. Like he's not. I mean, president-elect. He's not in the White House yet, and based on some of the videos we're seeing, I mean, on all different policies, he's already said we're doing this. We're cleaning house. So I mean, to assume that in agriculture he's not going to bully his way up and say, you know what, this is how it's going to be, and you can come along for the ride or not. I think I'm with Tyler. I think it's naive.
Well, he and elected to be aggressive. I think it's the other and much more organized. So the 16 didn't expect to win. They fumbled the football on numerous occasions. It was slow starting. It was very disorganized. There is a much higher level of organization in the first 100 days, maybe the first 40 days, based on a lot of the people we've been talking to. And hey, I can remember last winter telling people in speeches, we're going to get a different response when we come, the Team Canada approach at some of those, even at the state level. Things have changed. The landscape has changed, and we just can't show up with a bottle of maple syrup and a flag sticker on our backpack and say, hey, we're awesome and we're so nice, and that's just not going to work. It's not going to fly, and we got a better argument. So I think we can very much all agree on that. Hey, we got to take a quick break. We've got more of a RealAg Radio and the RealAg Issues panel coming up right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
You deal with many uncertainties on your farm. Managing risk should not be one of them. MMP's ag team specializes in risk management. Visit mmp.ca to learn how you can stay ahead of the game and plan for the unknown. Go to mmp.ca. Kelvin Heppner from Real Agriculture, Tyler McCann from CAPI, and Evan Shout from Farmer Coach, also host of the Truth About Ag podcast. Kelvin, Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index data came out this week. We talked about it on Wednesday's show. Canadian farmers not feeling too swell about their current farm financial performance, but a little bit more optimistic about the future.
Yeah, a lot of the more future, medium to long-term categories are kind of flat, I would say, in terms of quarter-to-quarter trends here. But the current financial performance, that's where we've seen a dramatic drop-off, and I should have pulled the chart up before we started talking about this. But what did we drop, from 84 to 62 or something like that?
Yeah.
Current financial performance. So
we're in the mid-60s, not good.
Yeah, it's a huge drop, and so 100 is considered neutral in these charts, and so definitely a big drop into the negative sentiment as maybe as those fall fertilizer bills come in, and at the same time the cash receipts aren't adding up, or the margins aren't the same as what we've maybe been used to the last few years. So yeah, not a good picture there in terms of, but it's interesting that the medium to long term there's still reasons for optimism there, it seems like.
Yeah, and Evan, what stuck out to me, and it's still a negative number, but we've had 3 consecutive quarters where confidence in making farm investments has improved. So we've moved from a low of 50 going back to last January in 24 to now we're at 69. So we're still negative, don't get me wrong, but we are on the incline. Reduction in interest rates has to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously driving a lot of the future investment looks. And I mean, the price of land is still driving up quite significantly, especially in Saskatchewan where I am, and obviously a little bit in Manitoba and Alberta. So we're still seeing raises in prices on land, and guys are still investing. And that's what the numbers telling me, is they're actually looking more optimistically at investing each time you do this. So the big one, I think, is, and as Kelvin said, this year didn't quite turn out like guys thought. And the scary part was they probably thought they had it up until the combine hit the field, where most years you kind of didn't. You kind of had a bit of an intuition that it wasn't there. This one kind of surprised guys, so I'm not totally surprised that the financial side looks down right now, but I am a little surprised that looking forward it looks up, because I mean, what we're seeing is margins are significantly tighter for next year. Fertilizer's still up, cost of equipment, all the fixed costs are up. There's nothing that's actually a decline in price, and we're looking at prices that are where they're average. And I mean, they still can fall. I mean, we're not at a new norm. I hate that word. So So that's where my sentiment is. I'm not sure I'm as optimistic as some are looking out further, but my guys are still growing. We're still growing. That's not going to change right now because of how much working capital over the last few years guys have actually tucked away. There's been some good years here, and I think guys are ready for a down cycle because that's when opportunities come.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is our results are for October. We surveyed mid-October. Purdue came out with their November result this week, and there's been like a spike in optimism. Yeah, very, and Dr. Jim Minter talked on a podcast about how very tight he thinks to the farmers thinking more optimistically because of where the election looked like it was headed, and that being a big significance. Tyler, how much do you think a government change would provide an outlook lift for Canadian farmers, or would it even change at all?
I think that there's a big difference between kind of the cultural sentiment of it, right, and what that means and how that plays out, and actually what it means to anybody's kind of business or bottom line. At the end of the day, I think we really do live in a world where, unless you're Donald Trump, not much that you'll do as a leader of a government impacts actually the profitability of any farm business. It's these decisions that farmers make every day that really matter. But that sense of, does the government have your back or not? Are you working with the government or against the government? I think really does play out around how do farmers think about the future. And so I think you'll see some of that change in the US. I think you potentially see that in Canada, where farmers at least will think that the government's got their back. Whether or not that makes a difference on their bottom line is a different story, but I really do think that it matters.
Attitude change. Yeah. Okay. So I've got some data on this front. So now I think, and I'm going from memory here, but I believe when we asked farmers, does the current federal government support agriculture? I think it was like a 0.8% said yes. So very low. Okay. We asked, if the Conservatives were to win the next federal election, what impact do you believe it would have on Canadian agriculture? 26% said no difference. 6% said it would be negative, and 68% said it would be a positive change. There is a little bit of difference in geography. Western Canada, 74% positive change, and Eastern Canada, 56% positive change. There is a bit of a difference from a geographical perspective. Evan, did those numbers surprise you at all?
A little bit, but not at the same time. I mean, we're looking at a perceived value, and that's what we got to realize is that there's a perception, and as Tyler kind of alluded to, I think Western Canada has been hit so hard the last few years that there's a perception that any change is a good change, and I do believe it's going to be a positive change, if anything, just to stop the bleeding, if I can put it into terms. But from that standpoint, do I think that it's just going to revolutionize, change ag programs, get research and development moving, and be this huge uptake? It's not going to happen, guys. I mean, we still got to realize that they want to be politicians for more than 4 years. And if they come in and do a total dismantle and change everything, it's going to be a quick 4 years. So from my standpoint, the perception is there. The actual way it's going to play out, I'm not quite as rosy as the rest. Let's put it that way.
People are unhappy. People want change, right? It's not been a good period for incumbents really around the world. I'll give you a piece of data that I saw this morning that just blew me away. This is a U.S. number. This is the first time since 1896 that voters have ousted the incumbent party in 3 straight presidential elections. Since 1896. Now, I would say this. On response to the U.S. election, Pierre Poilievre, is the next prime minister, his job just got a lot harder. Okay? A lot harder, I think. I think we can all agree with that. But I wonder if communicating to Canadians and convincing Canadians, Tyler, of what he wants to do just became a little bit easier in response to a President-elect Trump.
Yeah, I think that there is this kind of bottom line where some of the things that he will want to do, like getting rid of a digital services tax that the Liberals have brought in, will resolve a major irritant in the United States. I think that that's a good example of something that all of a sudden it got easier for the Conservatives to say, we're going to do this, not just because we don't like taxes, but because this is a huge issue with Trump. But I think that it's a complicated landscape. And we get into this world where, what if at a time when Pierre Poilievre is trying to fix the Canadian budget deficit, we see subsidies to U.S. farmers increase quite substantially. And again, one of these challenges that a Poilievre government's going to have to deal with is, the budget of the Ag Department is 40% higher than it was when Stephen Harper left office. So, as much as we like to think that farmers are going to be protected, like there's going to need to be some cuts and some changes there. So where does it come from? And how do you do that? How do you manage that at a time when we're likely to see subsidies south of the border going up even higher? Like it's going to be tough, even in farm country, for the Conservatives to manage that.
Now, Evan, you wanted to talk about land values, and we have a little bit. I've heard from a lot of the audience, the difficulty right now in if I want to increase the size of my farm, it's not exactly an easy process it's expensive. Land's expensive. Okay. And there is depending on how you look at it, the opportunities, you can find probably some nooks and crannies where there is some opportunities there. We asked farmers, what do you expect to happen to farmland values in the next 12 months? Okay. 36% said it was going up and 54% said it was staying the same, while only 10% said it was going down. Now, for those that thought it was going up, 44% said a 5% increase and 47% said it was going to go up 6 to 10%, which is a pretty strong market. What are your thoughts in terms of customers? Is you do the analysis and you talk to some of your customers?
Let's start with what province you in, because that's going to dictate the rise. And I say rise because I'm in the poll it's going to continue, guys. And the reason I say that is not because I believe it should, but I believe that there's so much working capital that farms have accumulated over these last 3-4 years of really good prices. And I realize we went through a drought, but not every farm felt that drought. So there is, even in our client base, like we're 80% more working capital than we were 5 years ago across our client mix. So there's a lot of cash out there. And the other thing is we're seeing competition. And like you said, everybody wants their little piece. So the supply demand curve is still heavy demand, which keeps the prices escalating. And you brought it up earlier, the interest rates, that's just going to make it easier for guys to get additional financing. And a lot of farms now, the word debt doesn't scare anymore. I mean, the number on the balance sheet's not really that scary as long as all the ratios work. And guys are starting to realize that the financial acumen of some of these farms is getting really, really strong, and they understand not only their own operation, but the debt financing side of it and running, with CFOs such as us. And it's become easier for them to contemplate the numbers and make that decision. So what we're seeing is some areas of the province aren't shifting because there's not a lot of competition. So it's a little slower of a rise. Where other areas, I mean, they've escalated 1,000 to 2,000 an acre because of who's in the area and the competition.
Here's what we've seen, Kelvin. 10%, when we asked, do you intend to buy more land for the 25 cropping year, 10% said yes. Okay. And if you look at who those 10% are, they're exactly who Evan's talking about. They are farms over 5 million in revenue already. The bigger getting bigger.
Yeah, I think all of these things are whether we want it or not, and that's something that broader society has to have this conversation. But whether we want it or not, consolidation is happening, and we can talk about intergenerational transition that's happening as well in terms of the average age of farmers in Canada, and younger farmers just not having that working capital or that equity built up in terms of being able to take over from. There's farms all over the place where kids in their 30s are like, how am I ever going to take over for my dad or my parents when they and their retirement's on the horizon here? And so either consolidation, or we see a separation of who owns the land versus who's farming the land, and more investment type ownership of land. And I know on your podcast, Evan, you talked about trends in Europe and how North America often follows Europe, maybe decades or a century down the road. But I think in many ways here in North America, I think we're seeing some of that happen as well, where people farming the land may not all be owning the land in the future. And that's something that I think has broader societal ramifications that probably need to be talked about and worked through in terms of policies that policymakers have to work on.
Well, and the one thing we're looking at is, 60% of the farms are over the age of 59.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
10% of the farms are under the age of 40. So how do you fit 60 into 10 without consolidation? It has to happen.
And the ones under 40 don't have the equity built up.
Exactly. So we're looking at that we talk about it in the coaching a lot, and a lot of our farmers, that's their worry, is that you no longer can make money on real estate. You're going to have to make money farming, because that's the only way you're going to grow.
And I think that one of the interesting changes, Evan talked about kind of this greater sophistication. We spend basically $2 billion a year on business risk management programs in this country. And I think that reality needs to change. I'm not sure that governments can afford it the way that they used to be able to, but I think more importantly, those programs need to change to better match the sophistication that Evan talked about that those farmers have. And I think a lot of farmers are managing risks a lot differently than they used to. And I think it's a good example where government needs to play catch up to the reality that's happening in farm country across the country, where they're doing things differently and government's doing things the way that they did 25 or 30 years ago.
So Tyler, to put you on the spot, as the Conservatives right now, Adam Chambers, I understand, is leading together with Pierre Poilievre's office the platform development for the next election and what a Conservative government's policy priorities would be. Which business risk management programs are on the table there?
So my hunch would be that none of them are on the table. I think what you're going to see is some language around, we want to give farmers better tools, we want to give farmers more choice in tools. I think that you'll likely see something at a high level. Again, I think people expect too much out of platforms. You should go back and look at the last couple of them. Like, these are not places where you get like well thought out policy ideas, but I think you'll see some sense that there's going to be a commitment to change those programs, but probably not a lot of detail around what that change looks like yet.
Yeah. And we're starting to see it privately as the investments going towards education and acumen of the farmers. It's not just a handout. And then whether you, I forget what the metaphor is, but you teach a man to fish, right? Like, it's coming to the point where our governments and private industry are starting to realize that they need to have, I mean, farms are way more complex than they were in the past. The numbers are bigger. That they're really pushing the education side, which is self-serving for myself. I love it. But at the same time, it's making better producers. And that in turn is strengthening the industry as a whole.
Totally.
Which is better than handing out.
That's the systemic impact, right? Like, yeah, that absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. I agree very much there. Go ahead,
once again, it puts Canadian farmers in this position, and this is something Canada often finds itself in, as having to be the crafty, smarter enterprise, and we're up against our American competitors in some situations here, where they have the U.S. deficits, the world's reserve currency, and they can just keep running those subsidy programs like Tyler talked about. And how are we supposed to keep competing just with our smarts? That's something like a challenge that I'm not sure there's a good solution to.
I think, Shaun, that Kelvin thinks that Canadian farmers are smarter than we actually are. And I think that there's like a reality. I think that we've got this sense that, we need to be more resourceful. But I think if you look at across a variety of different indicators, you get the financial health of a lot of American farms compared to Canadian farms. Like, we don't do as well as we think that we do. And I think that there needs to be a bit of a reality check to how that is. I don't know what Evan sees when he kind of looks on both sides of the border, but I'm not sure.
He's putting me on a spot where I just want to shut my mouth right now. But no, you're not wrong. I mean, the financial side, especially acumen, it's been lagging in agriculture for years, and it's starting to catch up, but only on a few percentage of farms. So, I mean, we need to get that as a wider spread if we want to save the family lifestyle and the small farm. We want them to continue to prosper and stay around. It's not just about consolidation. You can look, I mean, we're a large scale farm, but I don't just believe in us buying up every acre. I actually believe in making the small farms do it themselves and actually push harder and get the financial acumen to make those decisions. And it doesn't have to be acres. It could be revenue, diversification. There's a million ways to be sustainable. So from that standpoint, I still believe in, and I have lots of US guys in the program, and they have the same financial acumen. There's not a huge variance between the two countries. The only thing that's being held back is we're a little shy on the marketing because we had the wheat board for so many years, and they're a little shy on the agronomy because their subsidies allow them not to farm every second year some of those lands. So there's differentiators, but from an actual business mindset and the scale, I think we're actually pretty even, to be fair.
We just have to keep in mind the willingness to compete. So when we talk about, hey, it's a global market, but what comes with that is your willingness to compete and that internal drive to want to succeed, not rest on your laurels and continue that. You have to have that, what a lot of people call that growth mindset. Now, that doesn't mean growth is all size. It can be in skills, it can be learning and development, it can be in terms of business practices, but you have to have that growth mindset, or quite frankly, you are going to be left in the dust. I don't care if you're farming in the US or in Canada. And that's, hey, one thing that we don't do in agriculture is we don't do much culling on purpose. Right? It's, hey, if you want to do this, you can do this. A lot of industries don't function that way. Agriculture does. So competitiveness is something I think we have to keep in mind. Hey, we're out of time. Okay, we got to run. Kelvin, have yourself a great weekend.
Thanks. Go Bombers. Big Western final in the CFL this weekend.
Oh, look at that. CFL references. Evan, have yourself a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
You betcha. I can't believe you just brought that in. So go Riders.
What? Oh boy. Tyler, have yourself a great, are the Renegades playing?
I don't know, Shaun. I'm not the sports guy on the panel. I can't add anything there. Leave that up to the Western guys.
It is a great slate of college football on Saturday. I am so pumped about tomorrow, and my wife's gone, so I have like the whole house to myself. Me and the dogs, we are locking in on that couch and watching college football all day. Hey, if you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks so much for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.